Hello, podcast listener. This is your host with the most, the list master in this episode. I've got a bunch of topics I want to talk about with Tucker, and we are going to start out with a discussion about coffee. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of JJ Meets World. And by the way, if you'd like to help support our podcast, visit jjmeetsworld.com where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some killer swag at our merch shop, or click the link to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star review.
1, 2, 3, 4. JJ Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. JJ has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirled as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
Tucker, I noticed that you bring a coffee container to our recordings, and it looks like just a really big thermos.
Yeah, I mean, that is what it is, I think. It's the brand is Manna. I found it at Menards, I don't know, like a year ago.
Why do we emphasize Menards? Menards.
You know, it's the region we're from.
Do you ever say Menards?
I have when I would do like a Popeye impression.
It's funny.
Yeah.
And you have to pour from your thermos into, and I know thermos is a brand, so don't get on my case, everybody. But you pour that. There's a looks like you could sip directly from it if you flip the top.
It does have a top.
But you don't like sipping from that. You like a cup, aren't you?
Well,
You're a cup man.
I'll do both. It really depends on the scenario that I'm in. Really, the story to it is that every morning I make a full pot of coffee and I drink it. Like that's my morning routine. It's just guzzling coffee. And so I'll make a pot of coffee, but maybe I'm at home and then suddenly, oh, you know what? Shoot, I have to get to XYZ. I just made this full pot of coffee. So I bring the full pot with me, basically, with this thing. And you can just drink directly from it. And I do sometimes, but it's the thing that it is really well designed at doing is keeping the liquid hot. So it will stay hot for 4+ hours if I just let it sit.
Sounds like it's vacuum sealed.
It's really well constructed for that purpose. It's not well constructed for pouring without there being just a ton of mess dribbling on the side.
So you take the lid off and you got to pour it into a cup, and if you don't go quickly,
right,
like it just.
I have not one single time successfully poured from this without it then creating a mess on the side of the thing. Not an issue I have at home with the actual pot of coffee, right? So
it's got the little lip,
right? It's more well designed for it. So what I need to find a thermos, for lack of a better term. I know it's just like Kleenex, but for a thermos that I could, if need to, put a full pot of coffee in the morning. Because also the cost savings with that is crazy. Like this much coffee, if I bought it from any of the retail chains, would be at least $15.
Right, and then you'd have to deal with Megan and Steve and Jonas.
Right, and maybe they forgot to put the order in time. Right. So now you're waiting. Versus at home, I've been able to find the brands that I'm really into and even time it out so I can wake up to the smell of coffee in the morning.
You also mentioned today that you maybe like, I wish I had something that poured better.
Yeah.
And my suggestion would be to like go to, I don't know, like a church or a banquet facility and just take one of their coffee mugs that they're like the jugs that they put on the like tables.
Yeah, those pour great.
They pour great, and then they're like airtight. Like you twist that thing on, and like nothing's coming out of there. It's a very simplistic design, and it keeps the coffee hot for a long time.
I honestly, I think that's one of the best ideas you've ever had. You don't have many really good ideas.
No, but this one is.
But this one is so good that I want to just give you props up front for it. So okay,
but here's the big issue, because you are part of a generation of people who are using they're making coffee at home and taking it with them. And they're using these larger than life things.
I mean, to think of us as a multi-generational group.
Yeah, okay, to some extent, maybe. There's some outliers, there's some adjacencies. But The problem is that there's no cup holder big enough for that. So how do you store that safely when you're going from place to place?
The way I do it is I put it in my front seat in the passenger seat.
Okay.
And then I put my backpack against it, so it's sandwiched between
like a dike?
It's sandwiched between my backpack and the back of the seat, and then I seat buckle it in.
Wow.
And then tighten the seat buckle. And so, I mean, it works great. You know, I'm not reaching over and opening it and sipping from it right there. But you know, I've done it where I've been either at shoots or let's say I'm going to be at Theater B all day because I'm working on some tech thing. I'll bring my coffee with me, and if there's no coffee cups like available at the time, then I will just drink from the thing. But it's heavy because it's a lot of liquid. But if I go on this journey, JJ, of finding, you know, what are we calling it?
I can get you. Well, I mean,
coffee carafe.
I would call it a carafe, but I technically think a carafe is open air. I wouldn't call it a coffee pot because to me, you make coffee in the coffee pot.
Exactly. Yeah, it wouldn't be a glass thing for making it. So this traveling coffee container, this pre-cup container. But I wonder what the options then are for getting custom designs on the outside of it.
Well, I think, you know, you could probably bring it into someone who does like, you know, maybe some etching, some things like that. But I think the easiest would probably be stickers.
Well, but I mean, do you think I could find something made to order online?
You could, or you could use one of the 50 billion that have already been produced.
But what if
then just make it your own?
What if I want one that's got the Ninja Turtles on it?
Stickers? You don't. So you want it to be like carved into there?
Well, no, I want it to look cool. Like it'd be neat to have, like a piece of art.
Okay, so you're saying there's heat, so the stickers wouldn't stay on. I beg to differ because there's a chamber
you and
between
I both
the outside and inside.
That
it's
stickers
not hot.
Being physical objects leave residue.
So if you etch this Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in there, they're gonna stay there forever.
I don't want to damage the surface of the thing that's gonna be.
So how do you want to customize? Are you talking about like a paint job?
I'm asking. Can I online, you know, where they're like, hey, you like a mouse pad? Here's a mouse pad. Put whatever design you want on the mouse pad, then we'll make it for you with that. You know, maybe that service is out there for giant coffee carafes.
You know what? You go to a church website, and that's your first start. And they're like, well, normally we put like First Presbyterian on the side.
I would love to get someone local to like just do something on top of it, but then I wonder, you know, with the heat, and it needs to be washable, right?
Yeah.
So like anything that goes on the outside of it is going to be coming into contact with water.
Have you seen those things where it's like dip painting?
Yeah.
Have you seen that? Where they put like whatever it is, and then you dip the object into like a body of water that has this essentially like coating on it. It's really awesome. Hey, I've got another $1 million idea.
I'm gonna search for this one.
Okay,
I really want this.
Here's my $1 million idea. So you know how you put seat covers over car seats? What if it's a netting that you put over your passenger seat? And it's got kind of a hole in the middle so you can reach through. But that way, like the netting is on like bungee and elastic, so it holds tight. You can pull it away easily, but it holds tight to the seat. So whatever you put there, you don't have to worry about. You don't have to worry about your backpack. You don't have to, you know, buckle the seatbelt.
That's smart, yeah.
Because, you know, interestingly enough, once the seatbelt is buckled, that activates the airbag.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were to get into a fender bender, both your airbags would go off.
Right.
And you might not think that that's a big deal or anything, but like your insurance company would be like, was there another passenger here? And you're like, no, it was my coffee. And they're like, you're trying to scam us. We're progressive. We're farmers.
Wouldn't you scamming them be like, yes, it was my grandmother?
Yeah, it'd be like, where is she?
Be scamming
where is
them.
she?
Oh, she's dead now. Thanks for asking.
Okay.
I am finding custom coffee carafes on Etsy. But
are they the old style banquet ones?
No.
See, that's what we're looking for.
I agree. You're I'm just telling you what I am. I'm reporting what I'm finding so far. I really, really, for some reason, I don't know why this is in my head. Oh, wait. Vintage MCM Corning Designs Cafe. This certainly looks the part. I just want one that's got like a wrap of Michelangelo on it.
Okay. Where maybe like his eyes are on the like...
Or something,
the cover or something
like a design that evokes the old like plastic thermos that would come with a lunchbox.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
I think that's really what I'm looking for is to get a fully functional Lutheran church basement coffee carafe, but that has been retooled to look like that.
Okay, I can get behind that. So isn't it interesting that we use coffee urns and we also bury people in urns?
Is it an urn?
Like a coffee urn is like the big silver, like...
Oh, we call it an urn.
Yeah, it's a coffee urn.
So is urn just the shape of the receptacle?
The vessel?
Is that what it is?
Maybe. So anything
Googling
that's...
so many things at the same time right
cylindrical. Now. Okay, before you go too deep into this, I told you I have a question to ask you.
Oh, that's...
And it's important, okay?
Does the audience know that you had told me that there was a question?
No, that's why I brought it up like that, so that they would get the gist. So I have been asking this question. You ever see when someone asks a question and it's pretty much like they're pulling the pin on a grenade, throwing it behind them, and then they walk away and just wait for the chaos to ensue?
Say that one more time.
So like someone asks a question that they know is divisive, right? And then they just do it so that they can like start a roux and then they walk away.
It's like when you walk through a room and you start farting. What's that called?
Crop dusting.
Crop dusting.
Yeah.
You've crop dusted some controversy.
I think more like this, like at the Thanksgiving table, like tell your family, be like, well, politics. And then before you know it, like somebody's crying and like someone's throwing a piece of turkey.
That is such a brilliant move, actually. If once
you're done,
let's just say your uncle at the table starts talking politics. When you're about to respond, literally just go, well, politics. Oh, politics, and just say the word politics.
I hate talking politics.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my question: how well do you know the movie Mrs. Doubtfire?
Pretty well. I mean,
describe the plot of the movie Mrs. Doubtfire to me.
Mrs. Doubtfire. So Robin Williams gets divorced. He's a voice actor, and he is also I can't remember. He quits his job because he didn't want to be promoting cigar smoking to kids, and that might have been the straw that broke the camel's back with the marriage or what have you. So, anyways, he's trying to find a way to be able to see his kids, and sees that she has opened a position for a nanny. And so he basically makes it the role of a lifetime, and with the help of like a friend of his, I forget the actor's name. He's got the really
Harvey Firestein,
really gravelly voice. They create a persona for him named Mrs. Doubtfire, who is sort of a non-magical Mary Poppins, and then through an unfortunate incident where one of his kids saw him standing up peeing, realized that Mrs. Doubtfire was a Mr. Doubtfire, and then subsequently found out that Mr. Doubtfire was dad. And so now the kids are roped into the lie. And I think, isn't Sally Field dating Pierce Brosnan at some point?
You're correct, yeah.
And then at a dinner table, like Mrs. Doubtfire does the Heimlich, and then a piece of like Mrs. Doubtfire's makeup comes loose, and then Mrs. Doubtfire has to like take all the pieces of makeup off at the dinner table, and it's really sad because you realize now just how far this dad has gone because he wants to be with his kids, but also how humiliating it is in this moment, and to especially in front of your ex and her new love and all that stuff, and then at the end of it, he's able to turn the character into almost a Mr. Rogers type character. Mrs. Doubtfire is a character who now has her own children's TV show, where she can be spreading a positive message to kids, which was really what Robin Williams wanted to do in the first place, and on some level is able to repair the relationship with the family. But I really can't remember exactly how that resolves.
Excellent. That's excellent. It's his brother who's the makeup artist and his partner.
That's right.
That's the only thing that I'm going to correct from this whole thing. You've written movies before. You know basic plot. You know that like a story requires certain elements and how it drives itself forward. Who is the villain of the movie Mrs. Doubtfire?
Well, there's not necessarily going to be a villain, but there are antagonists to the protagonist. So you could argue that in his own way, the new love in his ex's life would be an antagonist to the protagonist, but he's not the villain. he's not the thing
because
he's not the thing that needs to be overcome.
Because Pierce Brosnan actually loves those kids. He admits it without knowing anyone is listening to another person at the country club. He's been infatuated with Miranda for years. He didn't start this before, there was a divorce. He's a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
Also, he's almost murdered. Not just he doesn't die by accident. Mrs. Doubtfire pours pepper after she hears he's allergic to pepper on his food.
Yeah.
And that begins the downfall. Here's the reason I asked this question.
You could probably argue that, what is the Mrs. Doubtfire's character's name?
Hillard. Daniel Hillard.
Daniel Hillard. That the real villain is his dysfunctional ego.
So I've asked this question to a bunch of people. Every single just guy I've asked has said the same thing. Well, Sally Field. She's keeping him away from his kids.
Oh,
and she allows all the children to be taken away from him. And they go full on like, that's who the villain is. And if you watch that movie, they clearly portray her as the person who's stopping our hero from getting what they want, right? And they go so far that they have to impersonate somebody. They put on a rubber suit so that they can be close to their kids. Now, ultimately, if you ask a mother, they immediately go, Robin Williams. Robin Williams is the villain of that movie. And they're like, well, he just wants to see his kids. Nope. He can go through the court system and get the kids. Like, he had visitation rights. Like, he just needed to get his life together.
Yeah.
And he impersonated. He went in. He frauded that family. He murdered the new boyfriend. He throws the fruit. Like he gets just drunk and throws the fruit at Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah.
Those kids are going to end up in therapy like there's no tomorrow. That Lawrence boy is going to want to end up banging old British women as he gets older because he's got this weird reverse Oedipus complex. It's amazing because I don't have a real opinion on it. I just because I guess I would say the court system, that's the villain. The U.S. family court system is the real villain because they decide just because he's a man, he can't have more than just one weekend or, one night a week custody, Or you could also say it could be the employment system because clearly Mrs. Doubtfire didn't have to fill out any kind of I-9 or government paperwork. I don't know if she's being paid maybe just cash under the table.
That's a good point.
Which makes Sally Field a villain then because she's not following IRS protocol. It goes back and forth. This has been one of my all-time favorite things. I even brought it up on my radio show the other day. People immediately jump onto different aspects.
Robin Williams, I think, is more than anyone is clearly the villain because that is not what a well-adjusted person does, right? And I think the crux of their marriage falling apart is that he's just so unpredictable. There's just so much crazy. He's so fucking crazy that to him it's no, the only way I can do this in his mind is to dress up. It also, I cannot stop thinking of Mrs. Featherbottom.
The version in Arrested Development,
which is a cross of Doubtfire and Poppins, and the just the single shot of the dropping through the glass table.
Yep.
And how I forget the actor's name.
David Cross.
Yeah, not David Cross, but she's sitting there who plays his daughter.
Oh yeah, Leah Shawkat.
How she doesn't fucking break.
Yep.
It makes no sense because that is the funniest pratfall I've ever seen.
It's wonderfully done. And clearly it's a cut, right? They cut to it and then they cut away from it. Which is just great.
But you see, you see the full fall from top to bottom.
He's on a staircase landing and he's trying to make something magical, and so he's singing a song in a bad British accent, holding an umbrella. And he just immediately goes through that glass table. The umbrella does not provide any resistance at all for the short 10 feet.
He's starting to sing some kind of a song too, right?
Yeah.
And I love that the family, everyone knows it's him. He's not a good enough actor to make it work. By the way, in Earn, the definition of one by Merriam-Webster is a vessel that is typically an ornamental vase on a pedestal, and that is used for various purposes. Parentheses, such as preserving the ashes of the dead after cremation. So really, it sounds like it's a more ceremonial vessel on a pedestal. So if it's a coffee urn, that means it's a ceremonial coffee urn on a pedestal.
They usually are on a pedestal. They usually have like the 4 legs.
There you go.
Like, yeah, that makes sense.
There you go. So then is a water fountain at work, like the water cooler, is that an urn?
You're blowing my mind, dude. I guess it would be because it's on a pedestal.
It's the water urn.
I mean, so the pedestal is really the thing, but I've seen people just like with a clay pot.
So
and they're
then
like, that's an urn.
Is a water tower an urn?
It's the world's biggest urn.
Jesus.
Also, what happens when you have Jim Varney's most famous character and you don't want to say his whole name? You just say Ern instead of Ernest.
You're kind of an urn.
I am. Oh, I'm a total urn.
I'm finding a lot of Ernest VHS tapes.
That's good.
I've been fucking digging it, man.
I gave to a documentary called The Importance of Being Ernest, and it's about Jim Varney creating this character. And the Ernest character is so intriguing because Jim Varney created that for like a local commercial series, and it became popular, and then it became a regional commercial series, and then it got picked up to be like national for like Mellow Yellow. And they said this character, it'd be like if we had a Colonel Sanders MCU edition, right? You know, it's that weird.
And then he was in the Beverly Hillbillies.
Yeah.
And
Toy Story.
Nailed it. Absolutely nailed Beverly Hillbillies.
Yeah, he was great as Jed Clampett.
One of the tapes I have it's called like the Ernest Film Festival or whatever. And it's basically like 100 of the commercials, the old ones on a tape. So I've never really sat through those. I had watched the movies as a kid. What is it? Ernest Scared Stupid?
Ernest Scared Stupid. The first one is Ernest Goes to Camp.
Camp is so amazing.
There's an interesting thing about Ernest Goes to Camp because the rights for that. So Disney, I think, owns most of the major Ernest properties now because they were Touchstone. But for a long time, Ernest Goes to Camp was kind of like it was owned but not owned by someone else, and so it was the most valuable DVD I owned for a while because you couldn't get a DVD of it for a long time. And so the DVD itself was like $200 to buy. And it wasn't available for streaming. And now they've fixed it. They also have an International Ernest P. Worrell Day at the site where they filmed that, the camp where they film that every year. And you can go and you can meet people who are in the movie and they tell Jim Varney stories and there's memorabilia.
Man, it kind of makes me want to start like a subgenre on my shelf of camp movies.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, great. That's a great idea.
Wet Hot American Summer, Camp Nowhere.
Space Camp.
Heavyweights.
Yes. There's a whole genre of camp films. If you can find the made-for-TV movie with Michael J. Fox, Poison Ivy, that one is fantastic. I love that one.
Okay, so here's the thing. For a collector like me who likes to then create displays, and it doesn't have to be whatever, right? But if there are certain tapes go into multiple buckets, right? So right now I have all my Ernest tapes together. But if I were to make a camp subgenre, I'd have to take that Ernest Goes to Camp and move it over there out of the Ernest one. So is the fix just to have 2 copies of that same one?
Absolutely.
So you just have one there and then you've got one over here.
And I think the best one goes with your Ernest series. Yeah. And then like if you get one that's got maybe a little damage to the case, that goes in the camp series because maybe the camp series is only something that you put out June, July, August. Like with camp season, right?
I like that. I like that. I would love to do little seasonal dioramas. I should start doing that.
You inspire me. That's why I've started collecting Christmas movies is because I'm going to decorate in our living room for the holiday season with Christmas VHSs.
Yeah.
Also, I want to bring something up. Previous guest Tristan Ross sent me a page. Like, you know how they do the like #1 Halloween candy in every state? You know how they do stuff like that?
Yeah, like the BuzzFeed shit.
Right. Romper.com said this map shows every state's favorite Halloween movie for kids in 2022. Now, I don't know. Okay. I don't know how how the list was put together, maybe by streaming. But like Alabama is Scooby-Doo. Okay, I understand that. Connecticut, Hocus Pocus. Delaware, Beetlejuice. District of Columbia, The Witches. These things, you know, like I'm like, okay.
Where's this data coming from?
Right. I don't know how they're like, maybe it's by streaming numbers, like, but here's what pisses me off the most. North Dakota, Gremlins. Gremlins is a Christmas movie. It literally opens with Christmas music and talking about getting a Christmas gift for his son. They jump out of Christmas trees. They eat Christmas cookies. They think it's Santa Claus. Gremlins is a Christmas movie. It is not a Halloween movie. So romper.com, big fail. Huge fail. Massive, massive, massive fail. Also, a bunch of states include E.T. Do you think of E.T. as a Halloween movie?
No.
I think of E.T. maybe as an Arbor Day movie at best.
Right. Well, okay.
There's a Halloween scene in it.
There's a Halloween scene in it, and it's a significant one because Star Wars was kind of big too at that time, right? So there's like a Yoda.
Yeah,
and stuff.
They dress him up as a little Yoda.
Right. That's right. Okay, that's right. E.T. is one of my favorite all-time movies.
Really?
It is. And not only is it one of my favorite all-time movies, the physical tape is actually one of my favorites as well, with the green tape cover. As a kid growing up, I just always thought that was neat. And I also, I loved E.T. so much, and I was always really affected by when he got sick and got pale.
Yeah.
And he's like in the kitchen making that sound, like he's wailing or whatever. That always just broke my heart, and then him wanting to get home was just, it was beautiful. But I would put that on the shelf next to like Close Encounters and other science
Spielberg,
fiction movies,
alien movies.
Right. But science fiction movies where it's about like first contact with aliens, basically.
Okay. So
I
would you
maybe
put like AI on there?
Well, and I'd probably put the X-Files in there, right? Where there's like, there's this search for the answer to it, are extraterrestrials real or not, as being like a focus. I tried making a shelf of space movies in general at one point.
Well, that's pretty broad.
Exactly. So I had E.T. next to 2001: A Space Odyssey, next to Star Wars and Star Trek, next to Battlefield Earth, right? Like it was insane. You have to make subgenres for it to make any cohesive
Without
sense.
a doubt. Oh, I agree wholeheartedly. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about today is Blistex. Okay. You ever use Blistex, the lip balm?
JJ, when we were going to start, he was like, you know what I do now?
Now,
anytime I have an idea for something to talk about, I write it down in my phone. And so this is like topic number 3 today. Yep. Mm-hmm. And so I'm imagining he was getting into his car. He's like putting some Blistex on, and he was like, "Oh, yeah, Blistex is one."
Here's the reason. Here's the reason. It leads into a bigger discussion. Have you ever used Blistex?
Yeah.
You're positive you used Blistex brand lip balm?
I have used Blistex before.
Have you used other lip balms? Have you used Chapstick?
Yes.
Carmex?
Yes.
I have only ever in my entire life used Chapstick.
Oh, okay.
Only my entire life I've been brand loyal. I think it's because it's the brand like my parents used, and so like I followed through with it. I have never, and this is brand loyalty, right? Same thing for, I can't say I've always drank Diet Coke because I've had Diet Pepsi when there's no Diet Coke. Right. But if someone didn't have Chapstick, if my lips are chapped and they're like, oh, I've got Blistex, I didn't use it. I had to buy Blistex because I was in Minot, North Dakota at the Norsk Høstfest, the world's largest Scandinavian get-together, and the gas station nearby didn't have any Chapstick. And I asked them, like, do you have Chapstick? And they're like, oh, yeah, we got this. And I'm like, no, this is Blistex. Do you have Chapstick? Now, here's the point of this. This product is superior to Chapstick. The way it rolls on, its consistency. It is better than Chapstick in all ways. I have been using an inferior product and avoiding the superior product just because of brand loyalty for all these years. How many people out there, because they think, you know what, I'm loyal to this brand and it's always been loyal to me. Mm-hmm. That brand doesn't care about you at all. Okay, I'm telling you right now, Kleenex does not care if you die tomorrow. Okay, so if you have to go and find yourself another type of tissue, go for it.
In fact, they actually might, because people will be using a lot of their product as they weep over you. Like, yes, another one died.
This is an optimal time for a word from our sponsor. JJ Meets World is brought to you by Chapstick. Chapstick, the #1 brand in the world for a reason. It's JJ Gordon's preferred lip balm. you can now find in a medicated cherry, strawberry, or original. Remember, there are other brands, but don't be a dick. All right, back to the show. So I love Blistex now. Like, this is the thing. I actually went on to Amazon and ordered a 12-pack, like the display pack that they sell at the front of, like at the counter, like the, impulse buy.
Yeah.
I bought one of those to keep in my desk. So I'll always have some Blistex on me. I love this thing. I love it. Now,
I wonder if it comes down to the effect it has on different people's levels of chapped lips, because chapstick is a gentler, milder, more petroleum jelly feeling. It's kind of like Vaseline.
So it's the plainer Jane. So it's like for the elderly.
Blistex has a little more of Blistex is a little more of a burn to it, but it does. Lets you know it's working, right? It's like Pepsi.
Also, do you remember like when we were younger,
which is superior to Coke?
Where when we were younger, there was a the topic of conversation was that some of these lip products contained small amounts of like fiberglass in them, so that they would cut you, like make little tiny cuts in your lip, and so by using it, you actually needed to continue using it over and over. Do you remember that? Like that might have been an old wives' tale, but I remember that propagating itself.
I don't recall like the bits of fiberglass piece of it, but I have heard it said that if you use any kind of chapstick a lot, that you actually do start to rely on it, that without it, like you'll have like adverse effects. I don't know if that's true. I remember my friend Megan saying that about herself, that like, yeah, she was using chapstick all the time. And then when she would stop, suddenly it would get really, really bad. And so she'd have to use it all the time. But
my sister was like addicted to like a particular type of like lip balm, and it gave her what I called clown mouth. Because essentially, you're forming a barrier between your skin and the air, right? And so it like so much of the area around her mouth, like just like a thin line, like around her mouth had been deprived of getting oxygen. And, you take in oxygen through your skin, that it had become like white and discolored, like an albino.
Right.
And so so I called it clown mouth. And like, so she had to stop using it for like a year until like her skin finally got back to like what it was supposed to be doing.
Look, more dribble. See,
you're just dribbling all the time out of your
all the time.
Cap.
So I'm usually pairing it with a paper towel.
Okay.
What a waste of paper.
The next subject I want to bring up is my favorite apples in order of variety. Okay. Because we're in apple season right now, and it's prime pickings. So it starts with the Honey Crisp apple. It's the king of apples.
Yep, and that's the only one I go for now. And I understand, yes, there's a higher sugar or sucrose, whatever. I don't care. It's delicious. Have you had one before? If you haven't had one, then shut the fuck up.
So do you know how we used to only get Honey Crisp like during a certain time of year?
Right.
So the Honey Crisp apple, if
Science
you
has fixed that, though.
Well, yeah, the University of Minnesota developed the Honey Crisp apple.
Thank you, science.
And so they've actually been working on a new one that stores longer. Like, right? Yeah. And so you can only get it, I think, at London Byerly's in the Twin Cities right now. But the University of Minnesota has developed this new variety of apple that'll allow you. So they actually own a patent on that apple. So that's number one. That's my absolute favorite. Followed by the Gala Apple. Gala. And so maybe it's Gala. I don't know, but I call it the Gala Apple. It is a very serviceable apple for grabbing and eating on the go. If you're going to be dipping it in caramel, it's just fine. If you need to, I don't think it's a pie apple. The only downside is it gets a little mealy. You know what I mean by mealy?
Yep.
Like with that? Okay, then it's the Cortland Apple. That's my third favorite, the Cortland. And if you can get a Cortland, they're stouter, so they're not like what you'd imagine like if you see a cartoon of an apple, this is like a little fatter. It looks more like maybe like peach-like for it, but it's got that same kind of coloring. You know how like a Honey Crisp or a Gala Apple, it's not just all red. It's got flecks of other colors in there. So the Cortland follows that on that. And then I go to a Granny Smith. I go to that tart green apple. I love something about that tartness. They're great for pies. They're just perfect. The Macintosh apple is on that list. The Brayburn is on the list. The Jonathan apple I really like because I share a name with it.
I've never heard of the Jonathan apple.
The Jonathan apple, it's not in our region. It's not happy to our region. It's more southern, but it's a good apple nonetheless. The Fuji is next on the list after that. And the Fuji, I find like, for whatever reason, we have a lot of those during the winter here. Like that's an apple you can get during the dead of winter in North Dakota. So maybe it's grown in a colder climate, so it's more tolerant to things, like you don't want to freeze an apple.
Right.
So
right.
Going forward. And then I'm gonna end on the Rocket, and it's not ROCKET. It's the ROCKIT is my last apple.
The Rocket
apple, yeah. And I find those very rarely, and so that's why it's lower on the list because I don't get to eat it on a regular basis. But I remember being like pleasantly surprised. Red varieties are my favorite when it comes to apples. Now I will tell you this: why are we even growing the Red Delicious? That was the BS 1950s apple that we no longer need. Show me someone who prefers the Red Delicious apple, and I'll be like, oh, it must be great eating bread without butter. How's your skim milk taste? Isn't it wonderful just only eating like butterscotch and never chocolate?
But how much of that, though, do you think is you being acclimated to the sugar content in these engineered ones?
It's not. The red apple is pretty flavorless. It's always mealy. The skin, I think, always has like a very bitter taste to it. I think that's the apple that nature gave us.
I mean,
we're going to improve it.
No, you're not wrong. The apple that I grew up eating was the Red Delicious because that's just what we got. So yeah. I didn't really know there was anything else at the grocery store I saw. I just assumed, that must be sour. Oh, it must not be ripe yet or something as a kid. I just didn't really look into it. It wasn't until I was an adult and tried Honeycrisps. I thought, what's been happening this entire time? You know what I love to do with a Honeycrisp? First, you have to make sure it's been chilling in the fridge because you want it to be really, really crisp. But then eating a Honeycrisp, but with a paring knife, instead of just biting directly into it, far less of the skin gets stuck into your teeth. It's almost doesn't happen anymore.
Which is lovely.
And it's just satisfying. It's satisfying to like cut a little piece off and then eat that piece versus having to chomp around and get it all in your teeth and get all that, like everything all over your face. And now you're all sticky and gross. It's satisfying.
I did some research, just like how you were researching coffee containers earlier. From 1968 to 2018, the Red Delicious was the most produced apple in the United States. Gala became the most produced after that. Thank God. Because it's awful. Red Delicious is a type of apple with a red exterior and sweet taste that was first recognized in Madison County, Iowa in 1872. Today, the name Red Delicious comprises more than 50 cultivators. The history of it, I'll just briefly tell you what this. So the apple became a victim of its own popularity. As consumers began to purchase more of their food from large supermarkets, the apple's popularity encouraged commercial growers to increasingly select for longer storage and cosmetic appeal rather than flavor and palatability, which resulted in a less palatable fruit. In particular, the selection of redder fruit caused deselection of flavor, and the genes that produced the yellow stripes on the original fruit were the same chromosomes as those for flavor-producing compounds. Breeding for uniformity and storability favored a thicker skin. Later, as other cultivators entered supermarkets, the demand for Red Delicious declined. So Red Delicious was the OG.
Okay.
It made it there, but then they're like, but we want more variety. We want more taste. We don't want this thick skin on it. We don't want it to we don't want to have to use the same amount of bite power to get through the Red Delicious skin as we would human skin. That's what they're saying in this situation here.
I am not finding the service I require for my coffee carafe. All of the custom made ones I can find, it's just about, hey, put your logo on this thing, right? That's all it is. So I think it's going to have to be, finding something locally and then just seeing if I can plus it up after the fact.
Plus.
You know where I got that phrase from? Plus it up? An Instagram account I discovered called Sandwiches of History. you heard of this?
Mm-mm.
I got Jason Jacobson obsessed with Sandwiches of History. I think you would love Sandwiches of History, except there are a lot of recipes that would make you gag.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because what this guy does is, I think it's almost every day. So he's just got all these cookbooks, recipe books from like the 17, 18, 1900s. And then he'll just go find an old sandwich recipe and go, okay, today we're going to try to make this thing from 1802 from this handbook. And this one's called the cucumber sandwich. And then he'll make it and then take a bite of it and review that bite. And they go, okay, now let's plus it up a bit for the modern palate, right? What can I do to make this better? Because usually they're left wanting. They're weird old sandwiches. And then he'll do something else to it. But the phrase plus it up, I like that. There's something about that I really like.
Do you know a famous, like an ultra famous person who is known for quoting as saying plus it?
No.
So Walt Disney.
Really?
He would talk to his animators, his Imagineers, and he'd tell people to plus it. So, for example, when they're coming up with the idea for the Enchanted Tiki Room, right, where all the birds sing and everything like that, it's all animatronic. He saw the prototype for it, and there were like 4 birds who would all sing, right? And he said, "Well, you need to plus it. You need to plus it." And they're like, "What is that? Like, what do we do?" And he's like, "Plus it." And so then they came back and they're like, "It's 250 birds singing." And he goes, "Yep, that'll do it." And so I remember I read a biography about Walt Disney, and a previous guest, Scott Ecker on JJ Meets World, is the Fargo's probably foremost like authority on Walt Disney,
who even kind of looks a little like him.
He does. Have you ever seen the pictures of when he went as Walt Disney for like Halloween?
Yeah.
So I'm discussing
Uncanny.
during an improv practice this, and I said, like Walt Disney used to use this phrase called plus it, and I was trying to get the improvisers to think, okay, what am I doing right now? Can I plus it? So like, if I am working at a dairy farm, I'm working at the world's largest dairy farm. I'm working at a dairy farm that, only produces sour milk. Like, take one step further in the description of your character or your environment. And so I just say, like, Walt Disney used to say plus, and he goes, "No, he didn't." And I'm like, "Yeah, he did." He was like, No, he didn't. And so I did one of the like most petty things I've ever done, but
and you've done some shit.
I've done some petty stuff. After the practice, I sat down and devoted like an hour and a half to finding quote after quote after quote after quote, like whole websites, designated to this, like on the Disney site itself, like the definition of Walt's plus it. And I just posted and posted and posted. And like I spammed his wall. And I remember him going like, "Okay, I get it." And I wanted to be like, no, I don't think you do quite yet. I'll give you a little more. All right. Do you want to know what's next on my list?
Yeah.
I had takeout dinner from Space Aliens Bar and Grill on Thursday.
Interesting.
So on Thursdays, I coach improv at North High. And my wife usually goes up to Hillsboro to clean the church because she's the custodian at the church in Hillsboro. And it's usually my night of the week where I get to pick what I want for dinner. And I left and I was like, I'm hungry, but I don't know for what. And I didn't want to make something because I had been, it was a long day already. And I thought, what do I want? And I'm like, what I want is I want ribs, but I don't want ribs. Like I want like pork and barbecue sauce, but I want ribs. And I'm like, Martian Munchies, which is an appetizer essentially where they take like cuttings from like ribs and then essentially cook it all together. And, it's like one step down from burnt ends. So I call because they're not taking online orders.
Mm-hmm.
I would have had it delivered, but they weren't delivering and they weren't doing like DoorDash where you can pick up. I love ordering like DoorDash for like pickup at restaurants. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, totally.
So I call and I said, "Hey, I'd like to place an order for pickup." And he goes, "Oh, okay." And I could tell that it was loud there. And so I placed my order and I got Martian Munchies an outer space onion, which is like a blooming onion.
Oh, yes.
And it comes with that
That's what I was hoping was going to be on the order.
It comes with that Mexi ranch, that like spicy ranch.
Hell yeah.
And then
zesty.
A out of this world baked potato, which is like the Cajun ranch one. So it's got chicken, it's got Cajun dressing, it's got cheese, butter. It's a giant baked potato. It's genius. The giant baked potato is the unsung hero of the menu, I think. So, and then 3 sides of ranch. And I'm in North Fargo when I order it. And they say 20 minutes. 20 minutes, no problem. So I make a call to you and we figure out the recording time for this weekend. I make another phone call while I'm at it. And then I'm on a third phone call and I take 19th Avenue North to 45th Street.
Yeah,
and go
Space
down.
Aliens is a jaunt from Fargo North. I was going to say, like, how the hell did you get from Fargo North to, like, oh, I know where I need to go. I was like, there's an Applebee's right there.
Right, but I wanted Martian munchies,
right?
Yeah.
I get it.
And so, to me, I'm like, I'll give them all the time in the world.
You wanted Martian munchies.
So bad. And this is how bad I wanted it. So I get there, and there's a reason I don't I've eaten at Space Aliens maybe 4 times in my entire life, and there's a reason I don't eat there, right? It is chaos.
Oh yeah,
the running around of children, the adults who don't care about the children or care too much about the children. It never seems like they get that place clean. There's little cans making everything sticky and awful. And so I walk in and there's a huge group of kids getting their prizes, and I wait patiently because there's clearly only like one person running the front. She gets them all of their sticky hands and parachute dudes and everything like that. And I walk up and I say, hi, yeah, I've got a to-go order for JJ to pick up. And she goes, okay. And so she starts pushing buttons and she goes, so what would you like? And I was like, oh, no, I've already placed it. And she goes, oh, you don't want to order now? And I'm like, nope, I called in an order. She's like, oh, okay, hold on. So she disappears. And right behind where she is at the till, there's like a warming light and like a countertop where they put the to-go orders so they can stay hot, and there's no bag there. And so I already know, like, I'm in a situation. So, and I know, God, this sounds so petty. Just trust me. Just follow me through on this one. So I make a decision right then and there that I am going to be the coolest cucumber ever. No matter what the situation is, I'm not going to be frustrated. I'm not going to show anything. I'm going to be cool about this because they're probably doing the best that they possibly can.
Look at you.
Right? So,
who is this new JJ sitting in the couch over there?
I know. Versus like there's a strongly worded letter coming to your manager. So she comes back and she goes, I'm sorry, I don't have any order. And so then I panic that like I accidentally called the Bismarck location or something like that. And so I double check the phone number. I'm like, no, I called here. And a guy comes around and he's helping this girl. And he's like, oh, is this the to-go order? She's like, yeah, Brandon took it, but I don't know if he rung it in. Here it is. And so there's a piece of paper next to the till with my order on it that just sat there. So no one bothered to like ring it in. So it hasn't gone back to the kitchen. And at this point, when I ordered it, it was 5:30 before the dinner rush. And now it is 6 o'clock. Right at the dinner rush.
Brandon screwed you.
And so she said, I'm so sorry. Do you want to, like, we could ring it in and it'll probably be like 10 minutes. And I said, sure, no problem. I'll just wait over there. And so I found a little spot in the breezeway to sit and wait, where I watched parents try and teach their kids how to use a claw machine, which is frustrating.
Which, I mean, really, because teach how to use it, but like you can't teach yourself to win.
Right. And because here's the thing, parents aren't good at it either. And so now they're frustrated trying to teach their kid. You might as well just let the kid like push it, and then they get the thrill because you're not going to win the alien head either.
Right.
10 minutes goes by. 15 minutes has gone by. 20 minutes has gone by. I'm not like making eye contact. I'm not even glancing over there. I'm, like doing some stuff on my phone. I'm responding to emails. I am the coolest cucumber you've ever seen. I belong on VeggieTales. 30 more minutes goes by.
Holy shit.
Right? And finally, this initial woman I talked to came over and she goes, I'm so sorry. The kitchen's really backed up. Just don't worry. Hold on. It'll be here in a second. So I'm like, hey, no problem. And I continue to sit there for another 15 minutes. So I've waited for 45 minutes in the restaurant itself after I'd already placed the order. Now, here's the real bummer. Jill was up cleaning the church, so I was going to be able to watch The Simpsons on the big TV and eat my food and just be by myself.
And not have any of this going on.
Right, no yapping, no yip. I love you and I'm concerned about your health. Those type of things. Get off my case, lady. But, sometimes, as a bachelor, I don't think that you fully appreciate how great it is to just eat a meal by yourself sometimes.
No, I still do. I mean, probably not to the level that you do when it happens. But I mean, I there are days where I go, I have got it pretty good right now.
Yeah, I got it figured out.
Yeah.
So finally, she yells my name across rather than coming over and saying could you? There's nobody else in the waiting area, so she's like, Gordon? And so I'm like, okay. And so I get up there and she goes, okay, so here you go. And the total is $67.76. And I'm like, that doesn't seem right to me.
Nope.
And she's like, what? And she's like, and I'm like, that's not right. And she goes, okay. And so she reads back a rack of ribs and this, and then 3 sides of ranch. And I was like, nope, my order was for Martian munchies and the large Cajun ranch potato, the outer space onion, and 3 sides of ranch. She's like, oh my God, someone rang this up wrong. And I was like, it was you. I watched you look at the piece of paper. I didn't say it because I'm cool cucumber. I watched her ring this and you know what? And hindsight's 2020, right? I should have reconfirmed my order because Brandon's handwriting might have just been garbage. Right. So she goes, she's like, can you wait just a little bit longer and I'll get this done? And I'm like, you know what? How about this? How about we just cancel it? And she's like, well, no, because this is your food. This is your stuff. And I'm like, but that's not what I ordered.
Yep.
So I don't feel like I need to.
Yep. And you have now made me wait.
Right. So
XYZ.
Here's where the small miracle happens. Brandon, who I haven't even seen yet, I've only spoken to him on the phone, comes around the corner. He's got another bag and he goes, order for Gordon. And I'm like, yep. So she was going to give me somebody else's to-go order.
Got it.
Who also got 3 sides of ranch. So
Yep.
I kind of wanted to be like, is my mystery woman going to walk through the door and be like, oh, I've been craving ribs and ranch. So they ring me up and she's like, I'm so sorry for the confusion. I'm like, hey, no problem. And so she rings it up and it's $20.18. And I leave a $10 tip on top of that. And she's like, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, hey, don't worry about it. It's fine. And I was like, have a great day. Thank you so much. And I walk out of there. And have you ever held your breath because maybe you're in an area that's really stinky or something and you don't want to breathe it in? And then that sigh of relief when you finally get to take fresh oxygen in. The second I step out of the Space Aliens on 45th Street in Fargo, North Dakota, it's part of the Space Aliens brand of restaurants, I immediately go, damn it! And everything that was in me, I was holding on and holding on and holding on. I was so frustrated. But it also comes on the heels of the morning before. I watched people be so incredibly rude at a Starbucks in another town, and they were doing the best that they could to fulfill these orders. It was packed. It was super busy, and someone was like, can I get a comment card? And I knew that they were going to comment and say something crappy about it. And so I posted on Facebook, you know what? In the era we're in right now, where you're lucky if a restaurant's even open, if it can find enough employees to even stay open, let's just do away with the comment cards right now, right? Because if I'm a boss, the last thing I want to think is like, oh, this person was frustrated that it took them 5 minutes to get a piece of coffee cake. I'm more worried. I'm like, do I have enough people here to actually serve the coffee cake and like actually get it through the door?
Right. Yesterday for my dinner, I thought I'd hit Little Caesars for lunch, because it was still within the lunch special window, and no one was coming to the drive-through whatsoever, but I could tell that there were people inside. So like, okay, fine. I'll park in front. So I go in, and this lady comes and goes, oh yeah, like that. I'm like, hey, how's it going? Can I get the lunch special, which is like $6? And she's like, yeah, we got another one still, but it's gonna be like 5 minutes. I was like, okay, sounds good. So I pay, and I'm just sitting there waiting for it. And then I hear this following conversation from the back. Hey, so you watched the new Jeffrey Dahmer series? Yeah, I think it's fantastic. It's not as gory as I was hoping it was going to be, but it's pretty good. How many women did he like fucking kill? Oh, no, he just fucking killed dudes. He just killed dudes? Why? Because he was gay. Oh, he was gay? Yeah. Some of them were just gay prostitutes. He just fucking killed those guys too. This is the conversation between the lady I just talked to and someone in the back who's working. They don't give a flying fuck who is sitting out in the lobby. And I'm just there going like, damn, there is zero fucks given by this crew right now. And that's just the experience, I think, going into any restaurant at this point.
Any restaurant, right? And if you take a courtesy car from a local car dealership that rhymes with Borwin, the courtesy driver is a real piece of work and a real dick. I had to use the courtesy vehicle not too long ago, and the guy, I wait for like 20 minutes. I get there right when the place opens in the morning. Like they've just opened. And I get in there and they're like, yeah, the courtesy van will be here shortly. And so I heard my like service tech call and say like, yeah, we've got a pickup here. And I can hear him on the other line. And the line is like, he's like, yeah, I get it, Denise. So this guy shows up and he goes, courtesy van. And I'm like, oh my God, I should have just gotten Uber. So I get in along with another guy and he goes, okay, where am I going? And I said, I gave my address, and the other guy said NDSU, and he goes, it's 2 stops. Now, this is the beginning of this guy's day. And so he's like, all right, I'll do you first. And he points at me, and I was like, I gave him my address, and he's like, where is that? And I said, well, do you know the old Dakota Hospital on South University? He goes, I'm not from here. That doesn't help me. And I think to myself, like, oh my God. And so then he's listening to sports radio and he's arguing with the radio. He's got kind of a Joyzy accent, and he's arguing with the radio. So we finally get to my house, and he doesn't pull into the driveway. He doesn't pull over the side of the road. He stops in the middle of his lane on my street and then pushes the button, and the sliding door next to me gets open. And so I start to get out, and he goes, hey. And then he taps this like old pop cup that has the word tips written on it.
Fuck that.
And I said like, no way. And I slammed the door and I took off, and I heard him like peel out in his courtesy van.
Yeah.
And I was like, that guy, I'm going to give you a tip for what you did. Right. No way, hombre. No way. By the way, my Martian munchies were delicious.
Yeah.
They hit the spot. Even though I was eating them now at like 8:00 at night, they were just fine.
I have this dilemma of, do we call this episode Martian Munchies or do we call it Cool Cucumber?
Well, I got one subject left, so
well, let's see what happens.
Okay, do you know your favorite pair of sunglasses you've ever owned?
No, because I lose sunglasses every 10 days.
Okay, yeah, but like, has there been like, did you have one that you liked more than another? So like, I find I buy a lot of cheapo sunglasses because I do lose mine. I also sit on mine quite a bit.
Yeah.
But I've got 3 pairs of sunglasses through my entire history of having sunglasses that I love the most. Starting with, in the 90s, I had a pair of Oakleys that were the frog skin like layout that they had. And I loved those sunglasses.
Nice sunglasses, those Oakleys? Nice.
And I am positive that Dustin Buchanan's younger brother Skylar stole them from me. I am positive that this happened. I saw him in them later, and he's like, "No, I bought these," and I'm like, "Really? That's interesting because they're scratched in the exact same spot mine are scratched. That must be a flaw in the production." My second is the Ray-Ban Wayfarer, which is like Wayfarer is the Blues Brothers style sunglasses. I have a pair of those that actually fold, so they become like just essentially the size of the lens. They're fantastic, and I've got them in turtle shell. They're amazing sunglasses. But my favorite sunglasses, the ones I've gotten the most compliments on, were sunglasses I borrowed from a friend, and then eventually he took them back. Previous guest Phil Lund stopped at a sunglasses hut in an airport where I'm sure they jacked up the price even more than you could believe, and bought a pair of what are called Bob Marleys. And so they use the colors of the Jamaican flag, and it says Bob Marley on the side of them. They were so comfortable. I've got a kind of a big head, like a big face. And so like I like the bigger sunglasses, type of thing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, they were comfortable. I got compliments on them nonstop. If I could have figured out a way to Skylar Buchanan those out of his hands, I would have done it in a heartbeat. It would have been amazing. Those were my favorite sunglasses that I've ever owned in my entire life. So much so that I've actually gone on eBay to be like, maybe I should buy a pair of those Oakley frog skins. But now they're even more expensive than they would have been in the 90s. And I don't even know how I got these sunglasses because I wasn't like a kid who wore sunglasses.
I've been a dedicated aviators wearer.
Oh, yeah.
For years, right? I mean, that's primarily the style you'd probably see me in anytime I'm wearing what. But yeah, I lose them and or I break them all the time. And I don't know what my deal is. Like, why is it these things I just can't hold on to for some reason? But I'm pretty sure I have a pair somewhere in my house right now of aviators. And they're always either black, blue, or silver. It really just kind of depends on what the gas station I go to has and what feels like something I'll do. But it's only ever like $10.
When I was in Vegas, I won a pair of sunglasses that looked like a pair of like Elvis's glasses from back in the day. And so, bright gold around them. And I loved wearing those. Those were a lot of fun. But the gold on the outside that they painted was like a foil. And so I ended up getting these horrible sunburns, like just a straight line sunburn on the top of my cheeks because they were reflecting the sun onto my cheeks and burning and cooking me.
Imagine what it's going to be like at some point in the future when a VR headset is just like a pair of sunglasses.
It would be amazing.
This is all it feels like. It's nice and lightweight like that because I forget who, some other podcast I was listening to the other day, someone made this observation, but like, VR headsets we have right now, that's like the Gordon Gekko phone, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just this massive thing that at some point we're going to be making fun of how stupid these things look. But what are those things going to look like? The thing that replaces our Gordon Gekko phone of the VR headset.
So Ray-Bans put out an edition of the Wayfarer that had a built-in like camera on it that you could push a button on the side of it and it would instantly stream to like your Facebook account. So it was like Facebook and Ray-Ban together at last. And you could take pictures and it had an internal memory that it could store like stuff. And then a little red light a tiny red light would show up when you were recording. So it's not like you could be completely discreet about what you're doing.
Right.
And I got those for my birthday last year from Jill and I used them for like a day. And I said, listen, while I really appreciate this and this is a fun, gift, the novelty of this is going to wear off because you could only stream for like up to 15 seconds to Facebook. So the best you could do is like, all right, everyone, say hey from Disney. Hey. And you had to sync it to your phone. And so it had to have all this accesses to things on your phone. And I said, you know what? This isn't what I want. If I want a spy set of glasses, I'll buy a spy set of glasses, right? Or I'll buy a charging block that's got a small camera in it and I'll leave it, somewhere to watch my precious items.
Yeah, like you can make the steps happen, but it's far from frictionless, right? You have to have a bunch of things set up to make it work. But at some point, we'll just have devices that don't have wires whatsoever.
Right.
They just exist on a planet bathed in power.
And wireless charging is amazing. If I don't I have a magnetic like charger for my phone, so I just pick it, set it on at night, and it's perfect. Like it handles everything.
Do you have chargers for your phone strategically placed throughout the house?
No.
So I've just started doing that, but I have to cover them all in this like plastic sheath to keep them from being attacked by the cats. So I have all these like gray worm looking things around the house.
I'm very good at charging like portable charging packs. And so like if let's say I'm sitting and I'm playing like a game of Oregon Trail, right? And I'm on my phone and I need to, like, my phone's going dead, I'll just go grab a charging pack with me, so it doesn't matter where I'm sitting.
Right.
That's one of the only good qualities I think I have when it comes to device management is I constantly am recharging my rechargeables.
Right. Imagine a world though where like the power at your house is like you interact with it in the same way you interact with your Wi-Fi signal.
Yeah.
Where you're just, is your device in the zone of this charger? Then it's being charged right now. It's being able to accept, electricity at that moment.
And, even the step before that where they start building it into things like furniture, right? So like if I know that like, I can just throw this on the table and it'll charge on the table automatically.
Right, exactly. And I've seen that with these current like wireless chargers right now where you need some close proximity contact between the back of the phone or the front of the phone and the charger itself, where people have like carved out a piece in their dresser so it sits just below the surface of like the veneer, and there's just enough of a barrier to make it look like it's still a solid tabletop, but then when you place your phone on this section it'll start to charge.
That's nice.
So it's like conceptually it's already there, people can do it, but it takes a lot of steps to do it. I have one wireless charger for my phone, but it's a third-party one, and it's intermittent whether it works or not. Sometimes I put the phone on it and it'll wake up and start charging, and sometimes it as though it isn't there, and I need to unplug the wireless charger because that is not wireless, right? The wireless charger is not wireless, and then replug it in, and suddenly it can like do it again. So I haven't really been using the wireless stuff yet.
I've got 4 of them, and I keep buying the same brand because they work perfectly every single time. I can't tell you. I'd have to look it up.
It's not Blistex.
Not Blistex is from Ellipse Text. Also, this is the last thing I want to talk about today, and then I'll let the loyal listeners go. So I'm a Spotify user. Spotify is my jam. I have the premium subscription to it. I'm very proud of my Spotify, but one thing I've noticed is that there are these custom playlists, and eventually I want to make custom playlists for like, hey, are you going on a road trip? Here's 5 JJ Meets Worlds episodes that like are perfect for while you're road tripping. But there are some, how do I say this? There are some playlists that are amazing, and you can find other people's playlists that they've put together where they've curated, and added individual songs and stuff like that. And so one I want to give a shout out to is Blackboard 1. Blackboard, all one word, and then space, and then just the number 1. The user on it is Terry Trickle, and this is the playlist that plays at the Blackboard restaurant in Vergas, Minnesota, and it is amazing. It's 21 hours and 30 minutes. And it's just got, like, you have to put it on random because it's all over the place. But, like, you're going to have, like, Thank God I'm a Country Boy, and then Handle with Care by the Traveling Wilburys. And then you're going to have, The First Cut is the Deepest by Sheryl Crow. Short Skirt, Long Jacket by Cake. I'll Stand By You by the Pretenders. S.O.B. by Nathaniel Ratliff and the Night Sweats. I'm on Fire by Bruce Springsteen. It goes on and on and on. It is one of the most amazingly curated playlists I've ever seen, and Terry made it for the restaurant. And so it invokes a lot of like nostalgia, but then there's new stuff on it. It's great. And then the other one is music from Malcolm in the Middle. So once a year I rewatch through the Malcolm in the Middle series, which is a wonderful like 90s, early 2000s series.
A lot of close-up shots with the wide angle.
A lot of them.
Like the commercials.
And you know what? Like, you really see how brilliant of a performer Bryan Cranston is. Like, when you think of, he went from this to Breaking Bad, like, it's amazing. But the music in it is a love letter to, like, the late 90s, early 2000s. And it is, oh, my God. It is
I get knocked down, and I get up again.
There's definitely
You're never
Chumbawamba.
gonna keep me down.
But that's one that you can listen to for a long time and like have some fun with it. Like I highly recommend it. So, and of course, not every song from Malcolm in the Middle is able to be on there because some artists never made it onto Spotify for whatever reason. Like they were like, no, we're holding out. We're holding out for some of that sweet, sweet Napster subscription money.
Did Chumbawamba have any other hits?
I don't think so. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help us continue to produce new episodes each week, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some swag at the merch shop, or follow our link to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the sites the cool kids are using these days. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by visiting moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, check out linebenders.com, where you can find direct contact info for JJ or booking information. There's one thing left on my list, but the world really doesn't need to know how I solved world hunger.